Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to Bipolar Lines, the podcast where two spouses talk about navigating and loving someone with bipolar disorder. I'm Brooke.
And I'm Laura, and today's episode, we are talking all about relationships with other people when you have a spouse with bipolar disorder.
Yes, this could be a long one.
It could be a long one. It's so complicated.
So very complicated. All right, well, do you want to dive in?
Sure. I mean, I guess the immediate one that comes to me that I'm thinking of right now when we were starting this episode is, there's interactions that my kids' friends' parents have had with my husband when he's been manic that, have probably not been great. And so they're still my kids' friends. And so we recently but wanted to hang out. Like, she wanted to go hang out with her friend and the parent was there. And the previous time that she'd seen Cody was not a great interaction. He was rude. I mean, and not excessively rude, but he was obviously off.
Right.
And he, hadn't seen her since his last episode. And he did end up just like, hey, I'm sorry. Like, I'm bipolar and I go manic sometimes. And she was cool. Like, she already knew that. But it's just so awkward. Like, and that did break the ice, but it's very, very awkward.
Yeah.
Coming back
sure.
from the episodes. Yeah.
Yeah. The whole dynamic when there are other people involved, you're like,
yes.
what do I even say something, right?
I know.
Because the stigma tied to bipolar disorder, mental illness in general, from what I've learned, is like Jekyll and Hyde.
Yeah.
And there is this characteristic of abuse that exists. Not, how do I say this? More like throwing tables.
Yeah.
Or smashing glasses, for example, are two things that come to mind that come along with that stigma of mental illness. Like, they could be destructive, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you add that into the conversation of, in your case, the parents of your kids' friends, like, we don't know what they know about the illness. We have no idea
Yes,
their level of
exactly.
education. So where do you start? Like,
Yeah.
where on the scale of education do we need to start?
And sometimes it doesn't even get there because parents have just opted out.
Yep.
So it's just like, well, doesn't seem like a safe environment, so they don't come to our house anymore. Or, and it makes me feel bad for my kids. I understand if parents aren't educated, why you would go that route. I understand all of it, but that's why breaking the stigma is so important, because if you realized that bipolar disorder is largely episodic and, if they saw something, or I don't know. I mean, even then, I guess I see why parents might keep them away, but it's sad,
It is
like
sad.
it's a loss, I think, for my kids. And
Yeah.
we've never actually talked about how, kids don't come to our house. They're always going to other houses. But I mean, they've got, I don't know. Maybe I should talk to them about it because it happened. Yeah.
Yeah. I will tell you that my experience with that was with our oldest, and they were, I believe, in high school, maybe eighth grade, before freshman year. And somehow the family figured it out. The parents of my oldest daughter's best friend found out, and it was kind of like, well, you're not allowed to go back over there. She can come here, but we're not going. You're not going there. And don't quote me. It's been a while, but it took some time. And I reached out to the mom and had conversations explaining the situation. But I felt it was my role to just leave her with no doubt that there will never, ever be a time where, if your kid is at my house or not at my house, that I do not take my job seriously of keeping my kids, any kid, safe.
Absolutely.
And Jeremy is not a danger to your kid. Jeremy's more a danger to himself.
Yeah, right.
But I will also rid them of any exposure.
Yeah.
If he's in an episode, if something's happening, like, I make the decision. Okay, we're getting up, we're leaving,
Yeah.
we're leaving the house, we're going wherever, we'll see what's happening. And I will actually say, okay, we need to take her home. Would you like to go spend the night at her house tonight instead? Like, I'm going to have that conversation. So it was just my job to assure her that, like, I don't know what you know. This is the diagnosis. And no matter what, your kid will always be safe and not ever be at my house when I'm not home.
Mm-hmm.
That is my deal with her. Like, if
Yeah.
that is what it takes for you to feel good about your kid coming over, that's what I'm going to do.
And she was receptive to that?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I think it took a little massaging because of the mom's childhood,
Mm-hmm.
and not to go into details because I don't know it, but
Sure.
it was clear that there was something else going on behind the scenes that was being projected onto our situation. Now,
Yeah.
all of that can be what it is. They're adults. They make the decisions for their own kids. That's fine. I get it. But as you mentioned, like, it's our children that then have to suffer
Mm-hmm.
from their choices and decisions.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's hard.
It's really hard. Yeah. I mean, luckily we do have some neighborhood friends that they've been able to interact with Cody and see that he's fine now, and
Mhm.
so but it's a slow process if it is a process at all, and sometimes it is what it is. And it's the same with Cody and Jeremy too, I'm sure. Like, he's just lost relationships over this.
Yep.
And he doesn't really blame anyone who doesn't want to be friends with him anymore. Because again, it comes down to education, though. If you really understood that he only said those things in an active episode and that normal him wouldn't have said those things to you, I
Mhm.
think you could have more grace, but people just do not know that.
Yeah. And unfortunately, I think too, the illness knows how to hit people in their feels.
Seriously. I think I had this one where they said, "Ooh, that line hits hard," because I was like, "Mania can be the meanest, nastiest, hits below the beltiest." And
Mhm.
people are like, "Oh man, I feel that so hard."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that can happen to friends, and they'll say
Yeah.
things that,
Yeah.
mean something to that person. It's not just like you're a jerk, or that's not what I'm talking about. Like, it's individualized assholeness.
Yeah, like I can
And
give you an example that happened to me from someone else who was bipolar. In my line of work, I do social media for a speech disorder, and there's a young woman who has that speech disorder that I was friends with, ish, acquaintances. But I mean, she'd come over and trick or treated with my kids before, made cupcakes before, acquaintance-ish.
yeah.
And then she went into a manic episode, and we didn't even know she had bipolar, but she ended up getting diagnosed bipolar. And then in a manic episode, she was on social media telling everyone that, what did she say? It was a white woman with privilege, and I was discriminatory against other cultures and races, which that could bring down me and my whole practice that I
Mhm.
do. And
Mhm.
so even though I understood it was her manic, I didn't respond to it. I didn't engage, even though I was like, crap, I need to defend myself from this public slander. Um, I didn't. And then when
Yeah.
she came out of it, she wanted to kind of be friends again. And I was like, look, like, I don't hold anything against you, but it's too risky for me to be friends with you in the social media work that we do. So
Yeah.
we can be acquaintances, but it's not going to be that level anymore. And I just was really honest with her. I'm like, I'm really sorry. I really do know it was the illness, but I can't risk that. So I mean,
Yeah.
and that is what it is. I
Mhm.
felt bad, but
Sometimes those boundaries are hard, right? And
mhm.
that's really a great segue into, you had to create that boundary with an acquaintance, not even somebody who was close to you. And that was
Right.
hard, and you felt bad.
Right. Yes. Good point.
So then imagine how that feels when it is somebody that's close to you. And I'm
Mhm.
not even talking about a person. I'm talking about a family member or a super close best friend. Like,
Yeah.
how does that work?
Right.
It's
Definitely.
hard.
It's very hard. So, I mean, family, I think too, don't you find that it's just so that first kind of re-entering society after they've gotten better, if it's been a particularly bad manic episode, at least for us, is always so awkward. But it's like ripping a band-aid off. Like, you just have to do it
Yep.
and see how it goes, because family really isn't going anywhere. Friends can, acquaintances will and can.
The
My
family can
family's
too.
they can too, you're right. But because they support me in my situation, my family's not going to. But
Yeah.
uh Yeah. I don't know. I mean, we could go so many areas. Which area do you want to take it to now?
I think the part that hits the hardest would be like your closest friends and your immediate family
Mhm.
is likely where people receive the most judgment or feedback, or push, because pushes in my definition right now are like pushing you to change the way things are happening in your marriage or your relationship.
Mhm.
Those pushes can be passive aggressive, or they can be direct, they can be aggressive, they could be all of the above, right? D, all the
Mhm.
above.
Mhm.
And how we respond to those matters. And I'm specifically talking about like us as the caregiver, the spouse, the loved one, right? My husband's relationship with his family and his friends, that's a whole nother ballgame. But
Right. Yeah, exactly.
for us, I think it is crucial to number one, acknowledge that there are things that are affected within these relationships with our family and friends because our loved one has a bipolar disorder diagnosis. And to not acknowledge that is doing us a disservice
Mhm.
for many, many reasons. And if you haven't experienced those fallouts, I don't think it's as easy to make those connections. Would you agree?
Yeah, definitely. Oh, so agree.
And they're not easy. And the
Mhm.
fallouts are never positive. It's always something negative, something embarrassing, or whatever that has happened. And it's hard because you have to educate yourself, and you feel like you need your family to also be educated. But if they don't want to educate themselves,
Yeah, totally. I do feel like even when I would educate my mom, it probably took her 15 more years to actually get there and understand and take in the information so that now when I talk to her, she is on board. She completely understands. Um, and she gets it. But
mhm,
it was like I said again at the beginning of this podcast, it was a process.
it is a process
Yeah.
because they want to protect us. And I can
Yes.
imagine, as best as I can, if my kids were in a relationship and they loved someone with this illness, I can imagine, kind of, because I'm educated, right? But to put myself in those shoes as being uneducated, not knowing what's going on, like it just looks like an abusive, toxic
You're
relationship,
right, exactly. Of
period.
course. Yeah, it does. Yeah.
So then you want to protect them, your
Mhm.
kid, and be
Mhm.
like, no, 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 these are all bad. This is all terrible. You deserve better. You deserve more.
Yep.
Those pushes that kind of create a divide in that
Yeah.
relationship that you then have to defend.
And defending staying with your person is never a good way to start or to, be engaged in any relationship with someone. Like I shouldn't
Absolutely.
have to if I'm asking for help, if I'm asking for you to, to help me with something, but if I'm not, unsolicited advice to on what you think should be happening in my relationship is never going to probably go well.
No, no. I mean, you've heard the phrase probably, opinions are like assholes. Everybody has them.
Yes.
In this
Yes.
case, it's kind of true,
Yeah.
right? Like, okay, yeah, I get it. I know you love me and you want what's best for me. I get that. But you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And then it's like, we're already exhausted on some level. I don't want to have to sit here and spend another 20 minutes trying to just explain this one situation
Right.
and try to convince you that it's not his fault, which just
Mhm.
sounds ludicrous to that
Mhm.
person
It
because
does.
they're like, yeah, it is. And
I know.
so you're just kind of like sitting there in this space of, this is uncomfortable. Where do I go from here?
Yes.
So how do you manage that? Where do I go from here?
I mean, for me, it was just a process, like I said, of education and just even telling her stories in the early days. Like I've mentioned before, I had this NAMI support group online, and people would tell stories. Or even when I read, I think it was Bipolar for Dummies, it was like a book I was reading, and it started each chapter with a story of someone
Hmm.
doing something crazy.
Hmm.
And I was like, well, this person is just an asshole. Like they're saying he has a mental illness, like they stole all the money out of the bank account and flew off to Mexico. Like that's a symptom of bipolar disorder. That's just someone being an asshole. Like,
Right?
and it would be though it'd be story after story after story. And I would be telling my mom this and being like, do you know this is actually like a symptom of a bipolar disorder? But it's so confusing at first because it just looks like that person is being a selfish, toxic partner. And
Mm-hmm.
when you don't understand what mental illness does to a person. So
Yeah.
it really was a process of even me learning and then realizing, oh, okay, like the a manic episode causes people to make these, irresponsible decisions or impulsive decisions because their frontal lobe is hijacked. And so that kind
Uh-huh.
of is why you see all of this risky behavior and, frankly, immature, I don't know what word you would use.
Childish.
Yeah, behavior. So
Mhm.
how do you go about it?
So I think for me, it was like you said, it was a education. It was finally getting to the point where like that diagnosis was real and I understood it and we could talk about it. Well, I understood it as best I could at that time. And then
Mhm.
just informing the family of the diagnosis.
Mhm.
It was clear in our situation that there was something going on.
Yeah.
And I mentioned before that Jeremy was drinking a lot.
Mhm.
Our focus was, okay, he's an alcoholic.
Mm.
That shifted to, okay, maybe he's not an alcoholic, but maybe he is, but also there's something else going on.
Yeah.
So I felt like I needed to bridge the gap of, no, he's not an alcoholic. But in my mind, I also was not comfortable saying that because I wasn't confident that that wasn't true.
Mhm.
So I was trying to make sense of everything while telling them what's happening, while trying to make sense of it myself.
Yeah, that's hard.
And you're like, but there was just so much that had happened. And he came home. It was a Thursday night, 2:30 in the morning, I believe, drunk, in a manic episode. I didn't know he was manic at the time, and said he wanted a divorce. And he left the next day. And in his mind, he was doing all the things right, staying with a friend, and eventually, he was gonna. Well, at first, he was just gonna stay at the house, and I was like, "No, you're not staying here. You can leave." And he left, and then got an apartment, and eventually moved himself out. But the whole time that he was doing this, like, the kids were with me.
Mhm.
I had zero time to like process this because I was trying to keep
Right.
myself in check for them, go
Yeah.
to work, just make sense of it all. So the
Mhm.
only option, we couldn't afford to have to pay for two houses. We
Right.
couldn't do that. My only option was to move back in with my parents. So that's what I did. I moved back in with my parents. So my kids had their own room, and I had the sunroom converted into a bedroom. I mean, I am forever grateful to them for that, for
Mhm.
allowing us to
Mhm.
come back there, and they would do it again in a heartbeat. I know that for a fact. But trying to go back home or live at home at 2019, 32? Oh, Jesus, Mary and Joseph. That was hard.
Right. Yeah, I can
Well,
imagine. Yeah.
and, he's out there living his best life and uh, in an apartment. He's free to do what he wants, where I'm trying to save money because eventually I'm going to have to leave.
Mhm.
But I say all that to say, too, that, like, when we separated, I was so angry and so hurt
Mhm.
that I said things about my husband that I never should have said to my
Yeah,
family.
I know.
I was so angry because I had spent so much time trying to educate myself and learn about this illness and be his supportive rock. For
Mhm.
him to just come home drunk one night and just end it all,
Mhm.
it just broke me into
Mhm.
pieces. I could not stop crying. I cried for days on end.
Mhm.
And I think my dad was finally like, "Here, take this. It's a Xanax." And I was like,
Oh.
"Okay."
Yeah. Mm.
It was rough. And that's just me. That's not even my kid's perspective.
Yeah.
But what that did was eventually we got back together, as everybody knows. But it skews that whole process of reconciliation because now my family's involved
Yep.
and they want to know that I'm safe and they want to know that he's not doing all these
Yep.
things and not being all these nasty things that I had called him before. And they're not wrong for that.
I know. I have a similar story because it was his first episode, though. We were young, no kids, thankfully, but at that time. But he was diagnosed, and then he got out of the hospital, and he was just a mess. I mean,
Uh-huh.
he was doing all sorts of stuff that wasn't going to be helping his mental health, and so when I got my therapist, learned boundaries, and then one of the boundaries was you need to stop using substances or I can't live with you anymore. And he obviously didn't stop using substances, and so I had to move out. I had to. And I remember telling my mom, just like sobbing and to her, like you said, just nonstop crying and just being like, the hardest thing to do was to leave. The easiest thing to do was to stay. But I know the hardest thing to do is the right thing to do. Otherwise, he has no chance of getting better. Maybe he has a chance of stopping this behavior if it's
Mhm.
worth it to get me back. But I also had to accept that it might not have been worth it to get me back. And I
Yeah.
didn't know. And so it was devastating. And then,
Sure.
yeah, I was crying all the time. And yeah, you're like telling your parents what's going on and sharing all the details. And then, yeah, then obviously we reconcile too. Like, yeah, they're like, what? Like, now, like you said, they're involved and they want to know because you
Mhm.
involved them. It's not necessarily their fault. And I don't blame them, but it's messy.
Mhm. Oh, so
Yes.
messy. So messy. And my brother, my sister, their spouses were involved, and I'm
Oh,
just like,
yes.
what have I done?
Yes,
What
yes,
have I done?
my
I've
my
created a
my brother and
monster.
sister live in my same area too, and so, oh my gosh, it
Mhm.
was it was something.
Yeah, for sure. And I know that
Yeah.
I could have handled it differently, better, you name it, right? Insert word. Um, if I could go back in time, I think I would have like started that other conversation through educating them about the
Yeah,
illness
yeah.
and also my educational journey and been
Uh-huh,
like, wow, what
sure.
I didn't know were all these things.
Yeah, but I even did that because I was educating them. It wasn't a shock. Like, I'm the one that moved out, but I was still educating myself on bipolar at the time, and it still didn't help because,
Right.
like I said, it didn't sink in.
Yeah.
So it only was after years now, where now it's finally sunk in. I absolutely have no doubt my family understands and gets this, and all of them, niece and nephews too, that
Wow,
went
that's
through this
awesome.
and saw it. Yeah, but it took years, and had I left, they never would have got there. It just would have been like, see, like he was just an a-hole or something. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah, yeah.
um, yeah, even with education, it was still no, I don't know.
It didn't work. Didn't go. Yeah.
Yeah, not
Yeah.
really.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's all yeah. My relationship with my siblings changed when Jeremy and I were reconciled. And I've made peace with that as much as I possibly can because I can only control my relationships and my contributions to those
Yeah,
relationships, right?
sure.
Um, my sister and I used to be very close. We are no longer very close. And,
Mm,
life just happens.
it does.
And I'm sure that, like, I don't know, in a year we could, I mean, we still get together on the holidays. Like, all
Yeah.
of that is the same. We just have a level of sharing now that we don't do.
Yeah.
So, like, I will not share with her my marriage because she doesn't want to know about it. And that's okay.
Mhm.
I don't take offense to that. That's a
Mhm.
boundary she's put in play because she was with me through the ebbs and flows
Mhm.
before Jeremy was diagnosed. She was there. She was the
Yeah.
one that I called. She was helping me through the shitstorms when I kicked him out of the house. The whole,
Mhm.
she was there.
Yeah.
So I will always and forever be grateful for that relationship. And I understand that boundary that she has to have to protect
Mhm.
her. In fact, I
Mhm.
can equate it to a relationship, a friendship that I had from a girl in high school. And I had to do the same thing. Like, I cannot keep going on this roller coaster with you because you are putting your kids in danger. I don't think I was putting my kids in danger, but in this situation, her husband was like breaking down bathroom doors trying to get to her and her kids,
Mm.
and I had to go pick them up. So different situation, dynamic was similar.
Yeah.
I was constantly like being pulled to her to help her or take her and her kids somewhere else or whatever. And eventually I was like, I cannot do this. If
Yeah.
I'm called again, I will call CPS. Like,
Yeah.
I can't. It's not working.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I
and you never know,
understand that.
that relationship might return, like, when you're at different stages in life, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because my sister and I used to be close, then we weren't close, and then now I would say we're close again. But it was, like, different life circumstances, like, her kids were little when I didn't even have kids. It's just you're in a different place.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, so and same with mental illness, maybe, like, just understanding and what you can handle. I mean, it's totally fair. Like, even though I did feel bad, like I said, with that one girl, I can't have this stress of knowing that she's going to be slandering me because I'm on her radar when she gets
Right.
manic, you know? So
Right.
if I'm off her radar, it's someone else she's going to slander, not me.
Yeah.
And as fortunate as that is, that's just how it had to be.
Yeah. Those are boundaries you had to put in place to protect yourself. And that makes sense. It makes sense
Yeah, yeah.
for sure. And my parents are similar. That they in the beginning, there was a lot of hurt in my family around things that had happened when Jeremy was in an episode. And again, I'm going to go back to saying, like, we did not know he was in an episode when these hurts happened.
Yeah, that's
So
too
to
bad.
try to go back in time and explain away, like, these actions happened because of because of this
Yeah,
illness,
yeah,
it doesn't really close that hole for them, the hole of
yeah,
pain in the heart, wherever they're feeling it. Like, it just doesn't. It's not enough.
yeah.
And some people want apologies that they're never going to get.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I had to make the decision to, like, accept that, because my husband was so fragile for 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. So for 7 years straight, so fragile that the
Mhm.
idea of looking at him and being like, if I want my relationship with my sister to get better, I need you to apologize for the things that happened on this time, this time, and this time.
Mhm.
I need you to take accountability for those. The thought of doing that was crippling. I
Yeah.
couldn't do it.
Yeah, because like you said, it puts him at risk for diving even more into shame, guilt, which can spiral into a depressive episode, and it's a dark place. It could have gone to a dark
Yep.
place.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because the
And if
truth is, his perception is his perception during that
Mhm.
episode. He
Mhm.
remembers bits and pieces, and of course, everybody else has their own perception, their own reality, their own experiences. They're never going to blend.
Yeah.
They're never going to, like, sing the same song.
Yeah.
And that is just something that I had to get comfortable with and be like, okay, I want to maintain this relationship for my children with their dad, and myself. This is my husband. Like, I have to separate my family from my marriage and be able to move forward.
Mhm.
And it sucks. And I wish it was different. And like you said, maybe it will be, but it's not only up to me. And I think that's actually the hardest part of these family dynamics, is that, like, we only have so much say so, Laura.
Yeah.
We have
Exactly.
our say so, but we don't get to be like, no, it's fine. You can still love me and hang out with me and talk. It's fine. It'll be okay.
Mhm.
That doesn't work.
No.
It takes two people.
Yeah. Yeah, it really does. It's so true.
Ugh. But yeah,
Yeah. That's
and
hard.
I don't know that my siblings listen to the podcast or know about, like, we don't follow each other on TikTok or anything like that.
Mhm.
So they may never hear this, and that's fine too. But if you do, just know that's what happened, right? I had to choose his health and existing, living,
Yeah.
over the apologies. Not that they aren't deserving
Sure.
of those conversations. It's just something that couldn't happen, right?
Yeah. It's such a shame because we do always want to have everything come to a resolution and have
Oh my
it
gosh, yeah.
be nice and easy, but it's just not like that.
Uh-uh.
And like you said, you can understand their boundary by still be hurt by it and wish it was different. I mean,
Right.
that's fair
Yeah.
too. That's okay
Yeah.
to feel.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's what it's saying. It's all fair in love and war. I don't want the war, just the love part,
I
but it's
know.
inevitable, right?
Yeah. My family is tends to be more I don't want to say forgiving, that's probably not the right word, but at least supportive if I'm like the choice I made was the choice I made and they'll just go with it. So they may not be happy. I might get, these little pushes, as you called them, perhaps some, things like that. But for the most part, we'll get back in a groove and things kind of go back to normal.
Hmm.
And then particularly with my one niece and nephew who have been around him, they sometimes come on family stuff with us when we go camping or whatever.
Hmm.
They've seen who he truly is, and he lets himself be who he truly is around those two, honestly. Um, I, and so they know the real him, right? So
Uh,
like now if he were to do something even to them, they both totally understand as much as my children do, or if he would have to
Oh,
say
that's
something
awesome.
in a, yeah, it's really awesome. And it's because they've grown up with it. So they're in their 20s now, but he came around when they were 8 and 10 or something,
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's really nice. But I will say that now when they get married to certain people, I'm in the position of being like, you deserve better. And like they might like tell me stuff, about it. And
Mhm.
it's like it's hard for me to let go of the things she told me because I'm just like, you deserve so much better. And then, yeah, but my sister, her husband right now, his family is even way, way better than I would say my family at just being inclusive.
Mhm.
They're always like loving stepchildren or half children or whatever. And she said it's because their family motto, which I thought was really beautiful. So I'm trying to adopt it, is we love them until they don't. And I was like,
Oh,
dang. I mean, it's so simple but powerful. And
yeah.
when I think about how I want to show up for my loved ones, that I may not be agreeing with their choices, that's who I want to be, even though I'm not there yet.
Oh, that's heavy. That's good.
Yeah, it
We
is,
love them
right?
until they don't.
Yes, and their whole family operates under that. So that's why they're so warm and inviting and um
Mhm.
yeah.
Mhm. Wow. That's big. Oof.
Yeah.
Yeah, families are hard in and of itself for sure, but to have that mindset is, ooh, that's magical. And I think on that note, my family was more hesitant, resistant, whatever the word may be, um, because I had my oldest daughter when I was 19. So she's not biologically Jeremy's, right? He adopted
Mhm.
her when she was in kindergarten.
Mhm.
So they were not only worried about and I'm the baby, I'm
Mhm.
the youngest that had the baby first.
Yeah.
Then you're going to get married, and is this person not just good for you, but also good for Addie, right? So
Yeah.
we were a package deal. So, and I can fully appreciate and respect that they wanted what was best for us.
Mhm.
But having and bringing in a child into that relationship just, it complicated the dynamic even more.
Yeah, it would.
And then you add mental illness and 9 years of no diagnosis and just chaos. And it's like,
Yeah.
whoa, no, I
Yeah.
swear he's good. I swear
Yeah.
I'm just like, somebody help me. You know, it's not
Yeah.
always like this.
Yeah, I know, and they just don't believe it.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
I think too, like, when thinking about like, oh, you could do so much better, or like you deserve better, like when we say those things to our loved ones, of course we mean well, and of course we probably mean it. Like when we say it. But the thing is that what is better when the heart knows what it wants? I mean, you deal with what you deal with when you love somebody. So, yes, in our case it happens to be bipolar disorder, and yes, it is hard.
Hmm.
But what if I follow this one woman on I tell my therapist, I know people don't like the would you rather games. And it doesn't help. Like, oh, just look at, you could have it so much worse. I'm not saying that that helps as advice, but I'm saying that when I am trying to frame things into and then put them into perspective,
Hmm.
I sometimes do that with family. Like, you know what? Like, there's this woman I follow on Instagram, and her husband was a Navy SEAL, and he ended up coming back from his duty and getting in a car wreck, and he's a quadriplegic that can't talk or move. And she's no kids. I mean, and she's by his side. Like, so, I mean, does she deserve better?
Right, right,
Well, I mean, yes. Like, I mean, you can make an argument that she does, but that
sure,
was her person.
right.
That's who she loved. That's who she married.
Hmm.
So, I mean, in some
It's that
respects,
underlying, we are all deserving of the best,
we are all deserving. Yeah, exactly. Of the
period.
best, period. And life is messy.
Hmm. That doesn't mean that's how life ends up,
Yeah. Yeah.
and just because I hate this whole thing, um, it happens in the true crime space a lot. Like, well, because she stole money, she deserves to be attacked. Kind of like, no.
Right.
Just because something happened, you did something, doesn't mean you deserve to be assaulted.
Exactly.
But somehow in society, we've kind of molded ourselves into cause and effect, and specifically more tied to women on the SA side of the house. Like, well, if
Mhm.
I think as a society, we're probably moving past this, but if she hadn't worn that outfit, then those things probably wouldn't have happened, right?
Yep, that
Like
used to be a societal thing for real.
for real, for real.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of plays into relationships when we say like you deserve better, which I don't say that because it makes the hairs on my hands stand up when I hear it myself. I will tell my daughter, for example, you deserve more.
Mhm.
We can all deserve more.
Yeah, for
Better
sure.
is indicative of the person. Like they're
Yeah.
a bad person.
Right.
But if to say like you deserve more from someone that loves you, I don't
Mhm.
even add that from someone that loves you. I just say you deserve more, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That to me is a reflection of my expectations and my standards, or her expectations and her standards, to say like if you aren't happy and if you think you are in need of more, like let's review.
Mhm.
Let's think about those things. Not
Mhm.
you deserve better, he's a piece of crap.
Right,
That's
yeah.
helpful to nobody.
No, and actually telling someone, giving that advice, like, "You deserve more," you can still that's not implying that, yeah, you can't that relationship is bound to fail. That's just saying, like, "Hey, in case you don't know it, you do deserve
Yep.
more. Set
Yep.
some boundaries and ask for more
Yep.
from this person that you've chosen, and if this person is not showing up for more for you, well, then maybe you look at that." But,
Yep.
yeah, I do like that.
And she's not married. She's nowhere close. I mean,
Yeah,
this is
yeah.
just people
Right.
she's talking
Yeah,
to,
yeah, sure.
which, by the way, this whole like, I don't know if you're there yet, but
No, I'm not.
okay, our
I know what
oldest
you're about to say, but
is 19.
yeah.
They
Oh,
don't
God help
date.
you.
They don't date like we did. Like
Y
they just like Snapchat each other.
Yeah,
They don't have conversations on the phone.
no, and
And
they
I'm
just
like,
text each other.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, have you talked to him? Well, yeah. And I'm like, on the phone? She's like, no. I'm like, oh,
I have a longtime best friend from 6th grade, and, she's, knee deep in parenting little kids, so we only talk over text now usually, but, we were talking about that and how she was like, "I don't know how I would have met anyone because, like, these kids aren't, like, dating, they aren't going out," and, I mean, for me personally, when I met Cody, and I know people are different, but, unlike anyone I had ever dated, when I met him, there was just something. It was like lightning struck. I just really can't explain it. It was a feeling like no other. I was even trying to convince myself for weeks that I didn't like this guy. Like, and I came up with every excuse. Like, remember, don't. I had already fallen for him, trying to come
yeah,
up with excuses not to. But how would I have known if I didn't meet him? Like,
yeah.
how do you? like,
It blows
I
my
thought his
mind.
picture was cute. Like, his
Yeah,
picture was like, "Oh, this guy is hot." But like, until I actually met him, I don't know. It does blow my mind too.
yeah. And I'm like, you have to have like a back. What do you call that? I don't even know the name for it now, but like another profile, another Instagram account to like stalk. But like, if you were the one to like ask for the phone number, you're a stalker. I'm like, that's just how do you plan on finding this person? I do, mom. Through what? Snapchat? No, yeah. And I'm like, that doesn't work for me. Like,
Yeah, I
I
don't
need
think it would
more.
work for me.
And maybe I'm the weirdo, and she's like, you are. You would be a stalker. And I'm like, okay, forget it. Whatever, whatever. But yeah. Anyway, that's a whole nother ball game.
Oh my
I will say
gosh.
on the relationship front, having the best friend conversation has come up, and there is something to be said. And I know Jessie, you're listening. She's been my best friend since kindergarten or second grade. I'm having a
Oh,
brain fart now,
I
and I
love
can't
that.
remember. Um, and she has been so supportive from day one. She has been a girl's girl, right? If I'm
Yeah.
upset, she's upset with me.
Right.
And yeah, he's a jerk, and she's right there with
Yeah,
me.
yeah. But then
And
when you get back together and you're happy, she's happy with
yeah,
you.
exactly. And that's
Yeah.
been like all that I needed. And of
Yeah.
course, we had those conversations where she's like, you shouldn't have to deal with this, all those kinds of
Sure,
things. And I don't
sure.
fault her for that by
Yeah,
any stretch
right.
of the imagination. But I have to also think, like, in her position, it has to be scary
Yeah, it really
to
does.
to hear the chaos that ensues
Right.
during an episode that we didn't know was an episode, right? Where that she's
Yeah.
just like, did you what? And I'm like,
Yeah.
please don't tell anybody because
Right.
this sounds awful.
It
It sounds
does.
terrible. Oh, and then, all of a sudden it's like, you're fine. And they're like, oh, but you're okay? Yeah.
Yeah, everything's back to good now.
just hang on. You're just
I
like, oh, okay. So she had to go with the flow. So
Yeah.
she was supportive and she was concerned, and she was supportive and then she was concerned.
Yeah.
So I am forever grateful for that. But now that we are where we are, and there's been education, and she knows obviously of his illnesses and stuff too. But we also don't live close. She's 2 hours away. Well, 2.5 hours away now. Anyway, my point is being able to find a friend or friends that have experienced the same thing that you have. I don't know that there's a term that I could that fully encapsulates the feeling that I've gotten from you, from Ashley,
Mhm.
from having those friendships where we don't have to justify. We don't have to make you feel better about the situation
Yeah.
to tell you, no, it's fine, I'm safe.
Yeah.
Or my kids are I don't have to justify,
No.
defend, or protect my whole world
Right. Right.
because
Like,
I'm
I know
explaining an
this sounds
argument.
crazy, and just so you know, he's not normally like this, but I don't have to make any of those
Yeah,
qualifying statements because you already
exactly.
know. You already
Exactly.
know. So, because even qualifying statements is exhausting. Like
Yeah.
sometimes you just
Oh,
want to
yeah.
be able to
Mhm.
get it out and to talk about it. And
Mhm.
yeah, I think having a community with like when you're going through anything is for me, it's vital.
Yeah.
Anything I've ever gone through, like I have to have people to talk to who know exactly what I'm going to. You're gonna get a cameo from my son real quick because I need my computer charger.
No problem.
Thank you.
Hi.
I thought it was gonna be Cody to come in, but he sent the little one.
He sent the little.
Thank you, bud.
So cute. Yeah, the qualifying statements are they're exhausting. And you know what they make, and for me, I'm getting ahead of myself. My brain is braining right now. But anyway, it makes me question myself. Like,
Yeah.
I have to make these qualifying statements. Should I have to make these qualifying statements?
Right. Right.
And then is this healthy? Because
Right.
I'm making these qualifying yeah. I'm just in this space where it's not okay.
Yeah. It makes you
And
crazier when you're already in a very hard space.
yes, yeah. So just not to have to do that is freeing.
Mhm.
So Jesse, if you're listening, which I know you are, I haven't had these conversations with her because I know she knows. She's watched the progression of me being on social media and having a podcast, and she's so super supportive. My point is I don't have to go back to her and be like, hey, I know you know that I'm not calling you all the time when I'm pissed off or angry or shocked, whatever, because I'm having those conversations with
Yep.
other people.
Yeah, that's
Because
the same
I
with my best friend too.
think it's freeing for her at this. She doesn't have to
Totally.
worry.
Totally.
She doesn't have to worry about it. So, for all of our dear listeners out there, you're probably sitting there going oh yeah, and oh man, I did the same thing, right?
Yeah.
I would I would implore you, give yourself the time and space to think about these relationships and the ones that are important to you, and have those conversations. Figure out what works for you and what doesn't, and then find people that live or are walking a similar lifestyle as you, experiencing the same things, so that you can bounce those things off of each other.
Totally.
We don't have to have those conversations, as you just said the other night, and I've said it before too. If I said this to anybody else, they'd be like, you're crazy. You've lost your mind. And I'm like, yeah, yeah, that happens. We don't have to worry about that, but here we are,
No,
right?
right, exactly.
It just is.
Yeah.
So I think friends are a little easier, aside from the pushes, because you're going to hear more pushes to move in different directions from friends,
Mhm.
in my experience,
Mhm.
than family. Um, but family is where things can get super, super messy, because any interactions, those are there's a fallout, the
Mhm.
awkward period, right?
Yeah.
How's the next Christmas going to look like?
I
And
know. Yeah.
those are hard. They're just going to be hard until you're comfortable and confident in the space and taking up space in
Yeah.
someone else's home
Yeah.
of people you love.
Yeah.
That's hard to even think about.
I know. It really is. But it can
Ugh.
be done because, like I said, I think with the key is education again, and just keep. And sometimes that might be exhausting too, and maybe you don't want to, and then that's okay too. You
Hmm.
like it, I mean, I don't think there's any one right or wrong way to go about family relationships.
No.
You know, and you and I both have had even kind of different experiences to some extent, And I think a lot of that came too because there was a period where it was, he wasn't diagnosed. That would have made it harder.
Hmm.
When Cody, there was a period of that with us too, but it was like because Cody usually goes into psychosis when he's manic,
Yeah.
it was so obvious something was very, very, very wrong. So even though he was saying things that weren't pleasant, not nice, whatever, insulting, hitting below the belt,
Right.
like everyone was still like, whoa, like
Hmm.
what is this dude on? Like, like
Hmm.
something is off. So we at least had that where it sounds like if you don't have that psychosis there and it's just the mania that's showing up, yes, it's going to look like he's just an a-hole.
For sure.
Yeah.
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 And that's how it was for us because he didn't have psychosis until
Yeah.
after 2020. So
Right. Oh,
it
interesting.
it
Yeah, I
was
could see
just,
how that would have happened. Yeah.
and you're just like, no, oh, okay. And for the record, I may have said this before, I may not have, but like Jeremy was very involved in our local community. He was the kids' softball coach. Like he
Mm.
was engaged, and he is in his element when he's coaching. Like that's his thing.
No.
He is such a good
Yeah.
coach. And I've heard from so many parents that are like, your husband did wonders for my daughter, gave her the
Oh.
confidence she needed. I would never have known he was struggling with his mental health. And I'm like, "Mhm,
Wow.
I never would have."
Yeah.
But that
Love
is the
it.
link that people can go to mask.
Totally. Oh, 100%.
That
Yeah.
that you'd never know.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
say
yeah.
like it's the ones you least expect. I have mixed feelings about that. It's the ones you least expect because a lot of times they are like screaming for help in ways that loved ones or people close to them should know, or not. I shouldn't say should, would see a change
Yeah.
when they start reaching or like needing more attention or additional validation or acknowledgement or things like when that shift happens is what I'm talking about. Like I would recognize it,
Mhm.
but I don't know that I would have recognized that 10 years ago. Right.
Yes, exactly. And I wonder if it's different even with like having bipolar versus major depressive,
Yeah.
versus like I even have actually it was a friend of one of my kids' moms, but I'm friends with her now. Like her husband had PTSD and unfortunately he's not here with us anymore because
Uh,
of what happened to him and his brain, but she said it came out of nowhere. And so I don't know. I was like, is that how PTSD operates? Where like
don't
with
know.
bipolar, I do feel like once you get to know them, you can see these shifts in moods.
Mm-hmm.
So who knows? But definitely with bipolar, I would say we'll just keep it at that. Like we know about bipolar from our people.
Yeah.
That yeah, I do feel
Good
like some
point.
like when you're the family, you do see a shift from baseline. So
Yeah.
whether it's into mania or into depression, there is a definite shift
Mm-hmm.
into those
Yeah.
two.
Yeah. Because it is episodic. So they do have that
Yeah.
lull period. I will
Yeah.
say, tying it back to relationships. So if you are in a space where you are not receiving support from your loved one's parents, that can be really super damaging. What did I just say? Damaging? I'm just making up words over here. Super damaging to your relationship and your relationship with them and your person, right?
Yeah.
Do you have any advice or guidance, Laura, on how to navigate that?
I mean, for me, I think that a lot of times I just kind of sucked it up, and I do not recommend doing that. That's how I handled it the majority of the time is we all kind of moved on and forgot anything ever happened. And I really do not recommend that. I just, even though you don't want to confrontation, and especially after you've just been in a period of your life that was just full of confrontation because mania is very confrontational.
Yep.
It's like thinking about dealing with yet another confrontation after you just got out of that just felt so much. I just didn't want to do it. But this last time, absolutely. Like, basically what happens is if you don't have that confrontation piece and you aren't setting boundaries and you aren't talking about the potential of the episode to happen again and how your reactions and responses and how you treat each other are going to be, if you
Hmm.
don't have those conversations, from my experience, it only gets worse. and worse and worse until something happens that is now unrepairable. It is unrepairable in my mind now. And there is no going back. There will always be major, major boundaries when it comes to me and them, and extremely low contact. It will never go back to the way it was. And, I don't know if it could have been prevented or not had I had those conversations after,
Right.
in the previous episodes, but it's water under the bridge. But I definitely do not recommend stuffing it down and forgetting it never happened.
0 out of 10. Do
Yeah,
not recommend.
that's not the way to go.
Meet at McDonald's, have a milkshake, and talk it out.
Yes,
Something,
yes,
right?
yes. How would
Yeah.
you, what has been your experience?
So mine has been very similar. There's been a lot of conversations that have been had, but there's a lot of blaming on different parts that have happened where I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
"Ugh." So now we're in this space where I hope that they are educating themselves more, but I had to create a boundary for myself and for my kids after, if you've watched TikTok, you'll know what I'm talking about, but it was the unexpected event that happened with my husband and his father.
Mm-hmm.
Boundaries had to be in place. They didn't talk, they didn't see each other, etc. But what that did, unfortunately, is it created a point where Jeremy's mom wasn't going to show up to things where his dad was not welcome or allowed.
Mm-hmm.
Interchangeable words.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's her choice. I don't
Right.
fault her for that. That's her
Mm-hmm.
choice. That's fine. Until it's at the expense of kids. Like, we're
Yeah.
adults, we can make adult
Yeah.
decisions,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
don't choose. Don't not choose the kids.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So when you choose not to come to your granddaughter's graduation party, like, you're choosing an adult over your own grandkid,
Yeah,
and that's heartbreaking.
that is.
And it also puts the kids in a position where they don't know what to do. Like, am I allowed to be upset over this?
Mm-hmm.
Can I tell her that this hurt my feelings? And by her, I mean the grandmother. Like, it puts them in the middle of things that they don't need to be in the middle of. Like,
Yeah, totally.
I had to put a boundary in place because I am not well relative to that dynamic of how they've chosen to go about things for the last 2 years for my kids.
Mm-hmm.
And so we don't interact as much as we used to, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows where it'll go in the future. Jeremy is now on speaking terms with his dad, which is odd for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's just odd.
Mm-hmm.
That's his choice. That's fine. But I'm in this space now, and we're still in it, like, literally conversations that would happen today. If he was sitting here, I would say this to him, which is like, your relationship with your parents is yours. Mine is mine. Just because you have decided to move forward, is what I'll say, doesn't mean I'm ready or that I
Yeah.
can't.
Yeah, it's true.
And there's no magic word, magic solution that would fix it for me.
Yeah.
But I guess, actions have consequences, and I will mama bear always.
Oh, definitely. Always. Always. The kids always come first.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so don't sweep it under the rug. And I guess my point is, I used to do that, and now, no.
You know what? That is exactly what prompted me to set this boundaries, because before it didn't involve my kids. Once my kids got involved and they were accomplices in certain things, you're done.
Game over.
Game over. It will never recover. Literally never. I mean, I
Never.
can't say never, but I really think it never will.
I
Maybe when my
agree.
kids are adults and I don't feel this mama bear instinct within
Yeah.
me, but that mama bear instinct, it is stronger than anything else. Like, for real.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. You play stupid games, you win stupid prizes, right? Like, no.
Yeah, but I think that is the key there. What you just said, the reason I pushed it under the rug, it's the many
It was
many
me.
reasons, because it was just me. It was just affecting me, and I'm like, look, I can get over it. I can be an adult. I can just let this go. And
Okay.
then yeah, when it involved my kids, absolutely not. Mm-mm.
Yeah. Nope. Homie, don't play that way.
No, no. I was like posting, I had these memes on my personal Facebook page that was like, you mess with my kids, like, I will come for you, like, 6 ways from Sunday. Like, I
Yep.
like, there it's just yeah.
Mm-hmm. I feel you. And
Yeah.
just so everybody's clear, the me that you get is the me you get. Like if my mother-in-law, father-in-law, if his side of the family listens to this, there's not one thing that I wouldn't say back to them. I
Mhm.
will repeat what I've said here to them with different words and more, specifics or details, what have you.
Sure.
The point is, I'm not just saying this to say it because this is a podcast and I don't expect they'll ever listen. They very well could. And that's fine. I am comfortable and confident in where I am and who I am, that I'm not going to just placate the group and be like, if you have problems, you have problems. No,
Yeah.
I am who I am. And they know that too. So I've had to be the one to set a boundary with his dad to say, you're not allowed to contact him anymore. Please do not text him anymore when things were bad.
Mhm.
I had to be that person,
Mhm.
and I don't regret it
Yeah.
because I didn't think he was going to survive it if it didn't,
Right.
So
Yep. Yep.
that dynamic is really complicated, I guess is the right word. But all of us, every single one of you listening, we all have our own sets of family dynamic and issues that are going to happen. Mine is no bigger, deeper, or worse, right? It's not it's not a comparison game. It's just to say that navigating the dynamics of families, it's hard,
Mhm.
but we are encouraging you to not make the same. I don't want to call them mistakes because we're giving ourselves grace, right? To
Yeah.
choose a different path,
Yeah.
choose a path that pushes you forward, not keeps you complacent.
Mhm.
That is where we sat. As much as you can handle it, and as much as you want
Right.
to, right?
Yeah.
If
Right.
complacency is where you need to be, okay, fine.
Yeah.
But at some point, have that conversation because it will inevitably crumble.
Mhm.
It just
Yeah.
will.
I know.
And nobody
Yes.
wants to deal with that.
No, they don't. Like
No.
I said, especially after you've just come out of like a crisis, like it feels like situation when they've been
Mm-hmm.
in an episode, but you
Mm-hmm.
serve yourself well if you can summon the strength to do it.
Yeah, so true. So true. The going theme, I think, so far in the last 4 episodes that we've recorded, Laura, is you have to advocate for you.
Mhm.
No matter what the topic is, we can give you our experiences, our lessons learned, but at the core of everything that we're telling you is that you have to advocate for you.
Mhm.
If we don't choose ourselves and advocate for ourselves, then we don't instill boundaries. Then we don't protect ourselves or our loved ones. Then we don't have good mental health. Then we're not
Right.
going to be the best versions of ourselves. And as they say, you have to put on the oxygen mask first in order to save your family, right? Or save your loved ones.
Yes.
That is hard,
Yeah.
but that is what we have to do.
It's
And we're not
necessary.
going to be great at it. Okay.
Yeah,
I'm
this
not
takes
great at it.
practice. Totally. Totally. This definitely takes practice. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yes. We are not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. And we today still make mistakes. And by mistakes, I mean and sometimes we will engage with the illness and we're like,
Exactly.
or well, it's just life. But all we're doing is trying to be the best versions of ourselves. And we're human. We're human.
Absolutely. We are.
Do you have anything else for this episode, Laura?
I don't. I think that was a good closing message. And to give yourself grace, I absolutely love that. And we have to love ourselves too. As much as we love them and want to help them, and as much as we love family and want to be there for everyone, there's only so much. Like you need to also prioritize yourself. Like you said, put on your own oxygen mask and be there for yourself as well
Yeah.
and love yourself.
Yes. Fully agree. Fully agree.
Yeah.
All right. Well, as always, new episodes are going to be dropping every other week on pretty much all podcast platforms. You can find Laura on TikTok at
The BP spouse and you add
break_the stigma. We did it. Yay.
perfect. And then also check out the Facebook group.
Yeah, go for it.
Bipolar Lines Pod. We're on
Yes.
Facebook. And so you can find us there. And we do, if you have any questions or comments or want any advice, we can find us there too.
Yes. And if you would prefer to watch podcasts, which is a thing, whatever, here we are. We have a YouTube page. It's at Bipolar Lines Pod as well. So you can find us there. Again, it's new. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just posting these videos and going with it. Maybe over time it will evolve and get better. But for now, you get what you get.
You're doing great.
And let's see, is that everything? I always ask myself if I'm missing something here. No, I think that's it.
All right.
All right. As
always good to talk to you.
You too. And thank you all so much for being here, for showing up for your person. And we'll see you next time.
See you next time.